His name we live, and in His name we die. Here and there, our souls prostrate to their Creator with humbleness and piety, and creatures do dhikr all the time, here and there. La 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 la, la 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 la.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, dear viewers, to our live program Here and There, our exclusive for Ramadan 2017. Now, dear viewers, before I go straight into our discussion for today, I would like to say two things. First and foremost, our topic today is a very personal one of my favorite subjects. Secondly, I want to begin by asking you all a question. If I was to address you all and ask you, who do you love the most? What would be your response? Your mother, your father, your wife, or possibly even your children? But what is the response that Allah wants to hear from us? The response is that we love Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam the most. So much so the Prophet taught us that you do not have true or complete faith until you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you love the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam more than you love your friends, your families, and the whole of mankind. Now, when we look into the life of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we find a very beautiful story. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was once sitting with his wife Aisha, and she saw that the Prophet ﷺ was very happy. So she wanted to take advantage of that moment. She approached the Prophet ﷺ and she said, Ya Rasulullah, make dua for me. Make a supplication for me. The Prophet ﷺ, on that note, he made supplication for her and he asked Allah to forgive her of any of her past mistakes. And he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also to forgive her of any future mistakes. Upon hearing that dua, she became very happy. She put her head on his lap and she took rest. Then the Prophet ﷺ asked her, did that dua make you happy? And she said, yes. And he responded, and this is the beauty of the response. He responded and he said that in every prayer, I make the same dua for my ummah, for all of my people. The Prophet ﷺ on his deathbed, he was reported to have said, Ummati, ya ummati, O my believers, O my followers. He was so concerned for our salvation that he sacrificed everything for us. But the question here comes to what? That actions speak louder than words. Do we truly believe and love the Prophet ﷺ? Do we follow up what he teaches us? Or is it mere verbal lip service? Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to go through in this program today how we can love the Prophet ﷺ, how we can materialize that love as well, and how it can be practical in our daily lives. So let us go around the table. Let's have a look who we have with us in the studio, and then we can go straight into our discussion. And as we do, I turn to my right. We have with us our brother Omar, our co-presenter. Brother, I'd like to begin by saying assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Thank you, Brother Junaid, for this introduction. And I'm really happy to be with you and with Brother Ali. And I just wanted to say one thing, dear viewers, that we in the previous episodes talked about like how to implement the Quran in a practical way and where to look for a role model. And this is the practical way to see the life of the Prophet. And this is the best interpretation of the Quran. Like, of course, learning about the Quran is one of the top priorities for us. But if you want to learn it in a fast and easy and most authentic way, just go to the story of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, in every area of his life. The social life, and even the work life that was before his message, and his treatment of his like wives, his children, and so on and so forth, and the companions and how they learn from him. We're going to go through some of the questions, some of the personal questions maybe, because we have like with us, of course, two brothers. They weren't before being a Muslim, they were Christians, so we're going to ask them what's their personal view of the Prophet before and after, maybe embracing Islam. But before this, I would like to introduce also to the panel our brother Ali, the news anchor. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much, Brother Omar. And I'll jump right in and answer your questions. Thank you, viewer, for being with us again for Here and There. But to respond to what you're saying about having a Christian background, as a Christian, we are taught, obviously, to love Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him. And we have the Gospel, the New Testament, to rely upon in terms of knowing what his message was, what his life was like. But when you compare it to the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, it's much more vast, much more extensive details about all of his actions, the things he approved of and didn't approve of. And so in terms of learning about the character, the desires, the preferences of a person who is not physically with us, I think is easier to accomplish if you have the extent of detail that we have about Prophet Muhammad.
Okay.
That's a major difference that I see. I mean, we have, and I think as Christians, you know, it's like I said yesterday, it's open to interpretation. Maybe what one person thinks Jesus meant is different from what 1,000 other people thought Jesus meant. But with Prophet Muhammad, it's very clear, and this is one of the things that I hold that I consider superior, more excellent about the Deen of Islam.
There it is. Okay.
And sorry, our guest this evening to join us to talk about this beloved brother who is a friend of ours. He is a frequent guest of ours, Idris Surat. Assalamu alaikum, Idris. Welcome to Here and There.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And as always, it's a pleasure to be with all you brothers and everybody else in the studio who give me an uplifting in my iman and make me feel closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these times of blessed nights and days. So
We're at the halfway point.
SubhanAllah. Interesting discussions. I want to start off right from the top. Two brothers, like Brother Omar said, rightly have entered into Islam from a Christian background. And we know that even as Muslims, the key for our salvation, the key for us to enter into Islam is the Shahada. And the Shahada has two parts. You have the belief in Allah, and then you have the belief in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how, as coming from a Christian background, how do you have to change your mindset, or how do you have to make those adjustments such that you have the love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
For me, I think one of the biggest changes had to be in the fact that you kind of embody it more, because coming from the other side it's more of sort of, I hate to say it, more of a lip service sort of like type thing. You say it and you see it, but it isn't really like embodied in the way that Rasulullah taught it. It's more of a real thing from Islam. Not to down the other religion or anything, but it's just a difference in the reality, as the brother said, the details and knowing more. And because when you think that you're getting something from someone else versus getting it from a prophet, it's a big difference.
Okay.
Often you feel like you're getting, when you're in Christianity, you're getting something that's really from the preacher's point of view and what he feels and what he thinks, and you know, he's the one who's in charge of like trying to make you feel good and give you the energy and whatever it is you're looking for, and versus Allah and His Messenger in Islam, who's the one who's giving you this. So that's, I think, the huge, big, major difference that I could say.
So Brother Idris, you're coming from a Western background. So before getting to know the Prophet, what was the first step? You knew about the Prophet by your own study, or you just heard from other outlets, like friends, like channels or something like this? What was the first step?
The first step for me really was reading Quran. And then when I read Quran, sometimes I wouldn't understand what was going on or what it was trying to say, because sometimes when you read something, you don't know the background of it, but you don't really know what it's trying to come across. So from that, it led me to the Seerah. And this is something I recommend for everybody, is starting to study and understand and read the Seerah of the Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when you start reading this, you will naturally come to love him. Anyone who, even non-Muslims who read about his life and what he did and the things he went through and what he stood for, at the very minimum, they like him. At the very minimum, and some of them even love him, even though they're not Muslim, because of what he stood for. And to this day, what we have from him.
So your advice is they go to the sources itself, but they
Yes,
don't hear from other media channels and.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, there are other outlets. Sometimes you might find a sheikh on a YouTube channel or a good channel, maybe on Huda TV or something like this. You will find some outlets, but honestly, I believe that these are supplements. I don't think they should be your main source of gathering and understanding these things. I think you should go and find someone who can help you and study the Seerah. Because believe me, until I did that, that's when I started to embody and understand really what this man has given us and what Allah has blessed him to give us. And before that, I just thought of him as as a prophet. This is something from the West. Coming from the West is a mentality that you'll find a lot. And Junaid probably knows this, coming from the West, is that we would have the average person who comes to Islam in the beginning probably have a problem understanding the idea of loving him more than yourself. Why is it necessary? And we're going to get into that later in the show. I don't want to make it, but coming from the West, we'll talk about why it's necessary and the implications behind it. Because a lot of people would think, why do I have to do that? I could understand loving Allah more than myself because he's the one who created everything. I love him. I love Muhammad, but why do I have to love him more than myself?
And Brother Idris, that's actually the exact response of Omar, the second caliphate of Islam, when he was asked as well about his love for the Prophet, and he said, I love everything, I love the Prophet, I love everything more except for myself. And then the Prophet asked him to go check himself. So then he went away, and then he came back and he said, no, actually I love you more than anyone. Then the Prophet said to him, now you have complete faith.
And I was reading about that story today in Fath al-Bari, how it talked about basically some of the ulama were saying that he went away and he thought to himself, if I were to lose something, would it be more dear to me, or that close to me, or losing Rasulullah? So he began to think about what was the most valuable thing to him. And then he returned, and there's different versions of the hadith, but one of them says that he left for a short time and came back. And he came back very quickly because it dawned upon him, losing him would be the worst thing in my life. More dear than anyone and anything in the world. So it dawned upon him, I love him more than anything, even myself. Losing myself, it's for Allah. But losing him is greater than losing myself.
Okay, let's get into that bit. We'll go on.
Yeah, before we continue, I want to say that you know, there are many barriers that have to be overcome, coming from, as Brother Idris is saying, coming from the West, Christian orientation. What kind of barriers? I'm sure I don't have to explain that the perception of Muhammad that we have is not favorable.
Okay.
And that there are some hostilities towards Islam and even Prophet Muhammad, and that, you know, there are lots of jokes made about him, that you know, the fact that he had more than 4 wives, and insulting his character as a result of it, and all of this is just a part of the whole campaign against Islam itself, right? To undermine who the Prophet is, and then, you know, people laugh and joke about the inferiority, the substandard, the moral character of Muhammad because of some of his young wives, so on and so forth. So you have to work through all of that. I say it's politicization of it's an anti-Islamic, anti-Muhammad view. And ultimately, when you work through all of that and you come to find out who, and start to read all the stories about the Prophet, peace be upon him, you discover that everything that, you know, you grew up with, you were taught, is wrong. It's baseless. You understand that this was a beautiful man. And he really, I mean, I'm moved whenever I read stories about him, how much he loved humanity. And one of the things that really made me say that that's my man is when he, you know, took a very strong stand against bigotry, against racism, especially against Africans. And that was a very important litmus for me personally, coming out of this racist society where all the Christians that we're worshiping with, they have a really serious problem, you know, seeing us as equals. But in Islam, there's no room for that. And the Prophet spoke specifically to it. Jesus did not do that.
That's very interesting.
But Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, did. And so that for that reason, and for Malcolm X, one of my heroes, was compelled to the beauty and truth of Islam because of this lack of racism. So it's a very, very strong point. Breaking through these barriers, discovering who Prophet Muhammad really is, and you know, you just, inshallah.
So it's very powerful what you've just said there. And you know, the very last sermon the Prophet ﷺ gave, on that sermon he stood up and he spoke to all the people, and he said to them very clearly, in clear language, that there is no difference between the Arab and the non-Arab. There's no difference between the black and the white. He made it that clear from over 1,400 years ago. And going to Malcolm X as well, is that Malcolm X, subhanAllah, he said that the solution for America's racism is for them to embrace Islam.
That's right. Yeah.
And actually I want to add something to what Brother Ali was saying here. When Prophet Muhammad, he was standing out for like the poor people, for the vulnerable and so on. That was like a great threat to the chieftains of Quraysh. That wasn't something easy. That was like telling them you're going to be equal to those like people who for like were slaves and so on and so forth. And we know that in Islam, when you pray, there is no difference between if you are a king, you are like from very strong lineage, and there is a slave just beside me. I don't know who is better in the sight of Allah.
In the times that we live in, it's easy for one to have a press moment and say, I'm against bigotry, racism, gender, whatever.
Because everyone is with you.
Right, and you gain points for it. You may even get into office as a result. But in the times that the Prophet lived in, peace be upon him.
Because they're fighting the whole world, you know, because the Roman Empire had this, the Persian Empire had this, not only the Arabs. So you're just having a challenge to the whole world, you know.
And I think also to add to that as well, with what Brother Ali is saying, is that the clash of the way people are treating or presenting the Prophet ﷺ from a negative side with his wives and so on and so forth was one of the things in his lifetime that he fought for was for the rights of women. That he was the one who put a cap on the number of women you could marry. He's the one who told that women can inherit. He's the one who said that women must be respected, they must be spoken to, must be asked who they're going to be married, and their permission must be sort of. If you look at his life, it's really contradictory to the accusations.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and also, I'm sorry to cut you off, Brother Junaid. Like also taking like one snippet of the part of the life of the Prophet, and they're saying that he had more than one wife, but they just failed to recognize, as Brother Ali was saying, because they didn't go thoroughly to the life of the Prophet, that he spent 25 years without marriage, and when he got married, he married only one wife for about other 25 years. So until the age of 50, he just had only one wife. So why are you just missing out all of this part of his life?
It's ignorance. A lot of hatred is based on ignorance.
Agenda, yeah. Brother Idris, I want to bring you in here, and the love of the Prophet, like you mentioned previously, I want you to pick up on that, is that we could love him or we could not love him or we can like him, but in Islam, are we obliged to love the Prophet the way you mentioned before?
Yes, it's he even mentioned this in the hadith about, you know, you're like you said with Omar, that, you know, your iman is not complete until you love me more than any other creation. So it's a process of understanding what that really means.
Go into it for us.
I mean, it comes to the understanding of who he is, what he is giving you, and look at it in a sense of how you love things in the world. Okay, for instance, people sometimes can't understand it, but I use practical, things to explain it. For instance, I tell people, why do you love your mother? Okay, most people, I mean, there are people who are strange, who don't, but most of us love our mothers. And I tell them why. It's because she had you? Is that why, the only reason that you love her? That's it? Most of us love her because of what she's done for us. When you couldn't wipe yourself, when you couldn't feed yourself, she's the one who was there. The father is helping, but mostly it's the mother.
True.
So you love her for that. So you love her for what she did for you. So what about the Rasulullah who's doing more than her? He saved your soul. He's the one who Allah trusted to give this message to come to us. So if you love your mother for what she did, how about loving him for what he did? So if it kind of helps people get past that hurdle of wanting to know, like, how do I love this man? I don't know him personally. I just know what he did and I love him. But how do I make it to that level of, completeness?
Yeah, you just touched on something that I think is, it's a tough point for some of us. I mean, if you have a personal relationship with another human being.
Sorry, Ali, can I ask you just to hold that thought? We've got a phone call. We've got Brother Ayman from Egypt. Assalamu alaikum, my brother.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hi, Mr. Gunid, how are you?
I'm very well, and yourself?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine.
Go ahead, give us your question or your comment for the day, please.
No, I don't have questions and comments, but I want to say the Prophet, our love for him has to be deep because he is the one who get the message of Islam, and he is the one who revealed, he is the one that who said everything about the Quran, and he is the one that who make the message and spread the message of Islam. And he was from age 40 started to become the Prophet to say the Quran and reveal it from God. And also God said in the Quran that when you love the Prophet, you also you be with the man, the one that you love in the last day. And also yes, our Prophet, we like him because he is the one that he said the message, and that's what I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Ayman, for those points there. We appreciate that very much. Brother Adi, if I can come back to you in the middle of a point before I interrupted you.
Yeah, in Idris's remarks, you were just talking about the challenge that may appear to be before us in terms of loving someone, having a relationship with someone who is not physically with us. Can you, I don't know, maybe Omar or Junaid talk about this. I mean, how realistic is it to love someone who's not physically with you, someone who doesn't interface with you, to hold you accountable for your actions, and to listen to you, to give you counsel, to give you advice? He's not with us physically, but there's a rich volume of information about him, what he thought, what he believed, what he did, what he approved of, what he didn't, so on and so forth. Peace be upon him. How about it?
You want to go first, Omar?
Well, I think it's I think it's obvious. It's like I'm not making this analogy like one for one, but like for instance in America, for instance, they have the like founding fathers. They think of them like they are the best of the best, and we are following them. Why are they doing this? Because of the effects. Because like America was colonized, and after that they had revolution, and now they're independent. So they see the effects, what's happening to the country right now, and who were like behind this. The effects that are happening, and this is the same. See the same areas that were at the time of the Prophet. What kind of problems and ethical problems that were there, and what changed among all of these nations, like by becoming better human beings, before becoming even better Muslims. So I think it's looking at the effects of what the Prophet had upon us.
Okay, if I can add to that as well.
Okay.
With respect to myself, I would say that the very essence of Islam, Allah tells us, "In kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattabi'uni," that if you love Allah, then you must follow the Prophet ﷺ. So they are intertwined, they are linked. So they're not two separate things. And for us as from a young age, everything we are taught is the Prophet ﷺ. So we're used to hearing his name and everything. So when we eat with the right hand, say, Mom, why am I eating with my right hand? Because that's what the Prophet ﷺ said, that's what you must do. When you enter the bathroom, you walk on your left foot. Mom, why am I entering with my left foot? Because that's what the Prophet ﷺ taught us to do. So you're so used to hearing his name, you're so used to hearing him being remembered in such a light that he becomes part and parcel of your life. And that's why if you hear things which are not right or insults, it's really personal. You know, like in the West, if somebody insults your mother, that's the red line. But for us as Muslims, there's a red line, and that's the Prophet ﷺ. So that's very personal to us. So yeah, I think it's a very personal relationship that you have from a young age.
And maybe what I can take from that is that you have to cultivate this relationship. Like you're saying, you grew up with it. Imagine if you're introduced into it, you know, in your you've left your home, you're independent, you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah, it's something that grows. Like as I said before in the beginning, I don't think it's something that most people are just instantly there. Most people, as being a human, we love ourselves. You know, this is nature. From this, Allah made us this way. It's something that cultivates, as you said, and grows. The more you know, the more you realize, the closer you come to understand the reality of how much you need to love this man and what he did for you. I mean, it reminds me of like in sort of Asab, where Allah says that Muhammad is closer to the believers than their own selves. He says this in the Quran. And I was thinking about this translation, and I'm talking to him about it. And it seems like it might even be better to say he has more rights of you than your own self. Because like in the instance when someone would die who had a debt during the Muhammad's time, he would pay it, as if he was responsible for you. He had more rights and responsibilities over you than your own self. I mean, the things he did and took care of, and even we could talk about the hadith about where they had the fire and the what is it, the butterfly and the other bug was trying to go in the fire. He says that men are, mankind is like this. They blindly keep going toward the fire, and I'm trying to keep them out of the fire. Pulling on their waistbands, and in one hadith he says this, trying to keep them away from it, but they keep going. It was out of love for his ummah, trying to save it. I mean, the more and more you realize the reality of what he did and how he manifested for what we have today, and for more so for what you're going to face in the future, you can't help but love him. You will learn to love him, and the reality will hit you one day where you realize you love him more than anything in any other creation. It will hit you the more you study him.
So there's a requirement. It doesn't just happen.
Rarely.
You know,
I
time time in service. You know, just because you're a Muslim for a certain number of years doesn't mean you're going to love the Prophet.
Of course.
You have to exert effort.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to study his life and try to follow him, peace be upon him, his example.
Yeah, it's rarely something that someone can give lip service and it actually be in the heart.
Mm.
The heart has to follow the tongue. You know what you say, you can say anything, and Allah knows if you're telling the truth. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. We don't know.
I think one of the other ways in which your love for the Prophet is manifested, it's not in your actions, but in the fact that when you have to fight yourself, when you have to contradict yourself. So, for example, maybe you don't want to speak to a particular person, but you know the Prophet ﷺ said that you must say salam to your elders, you must say salam to your youngsters, that you are put in line. Or, for example, if you want to drink a bottle of water all in one go, that's just the way you used to. But the Prophet said, no, take it in 3 sips, drink it slowly. So you're having to fight yourself to be in line with the way the Prophet has taught you to be. And I think that battle will slowly make you like the Prophet.
Speaking on what you're saying, this is one of the signs that shows that you love. You know, there's signs of when you say something, there's signs of it. Because you can say whatever you want, but signs follow what you say.
Yeah.
And one of the signs is exactly what you mentioned, is that you start imitating him. And I always tell people that it's important that you imitate him not only in his ibadah, because most Muslims, this is what they focus on, is, you know, following him in his ibadah, which is good, but more importantly, follow him in his adab and akhlaq.
Behavior.
More than his ibadah. If you do that, you're going to have a winning formula. Follow him in his behavior. This is the real challenge.
That's right.
When you find yourself, as you said, or someone you don't like, or someone makes you angry, especially in this part of the world where, you know, being in the streets can easily find a way to make you angry. You know, you have to remind yourself, what would the Rasulullah, how would he act in this situation?
And that's one thing I'd like to say, that we're making these comparisons between U.S. society and Muslim countries. You know, in the United States, we grew up listening to commercials on advertisements on TV, and there's a little jingle that goes with it, a little song, and we know the line of the jingle. We know the line of the scripts, you know, in movies, films, and we can quote them if we're in a situation with our friends. We can say, you know, this situation reminds me of that film I saw.
Yeah.
And for the Muslims, they're saying they're using a different standard. Not films or songs or commercial ads. They're saying, you know, this reminds me of something I just read in the hadith or about the life of the Prophet.
Wow. You can relate to it, like when you have a similar situation, you can relate to
yes,
what's happening.
Yes, it's deeply, like you're saying, you grew up with it, it's internalized, and what a great reference that is, as opposed to, you know, films that are made by non-believers or ads.
This reminds me of, not to jump in, but what you're saying reminds me of something that I kind of learned from Suleiman, I forget his last name, the brother who used to come here for Huda for some shows we did. It's one of the things that he used to always, you know, and say and preach and try to embody in people, is that we have to teach people that you know, the Rasulullah was not Superman. Okay, he was closer for you to understand and feel like you can, you know, you'll never be him, but you feel like you can do some things that he did. Not like Superman, where you're like, everything he does is impossible for you, so why should I even try to emulate him? Because he's Superman. He was a man, better than all of us. We'd never be him, but we could do things that he could do. We have to humanize the Prophet ﷺ and not make him like a lot of, this is a problem we have in the Ummah now, and especially for the youth. They look at him as like, that's Muhammad ﷺ. Come on, really? Do you think I'm going to be like that? Give me a break. You know, they think like that. And we have to break that mold and say, no, you can be this, and this.
He's a role model, in other words.
Exactly, a real role model.
For every generation.
And I think that's one of the other reasons to why they said that the Prophet ﷺ was more influential than Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, was the fact that Muhammad ﷺ fulfilled many roles that Jesus didn't fulfill. For example, Jesus was never married. So we don't know how you should interact. He didn't teach us how to interact with our wives and so on and so forth. And he wasn't a businessman, and the Prophet was. So you get to hear more from that perspective.
And maybe the reason behind this is because Prophet Jesus wasn't sent to the whole humanity.
That's right.
Every
one
prophet.
of the things the ulama say is that this is one of the reasons why, because he needed to give examples for, you know, that transcends time and cultures and places and lands that stand the test of time. And he couldn't do that if he didn't have, you know, fulfilled all of these roles. And this is the interesting point is that I'm sure some of you have read this book, Michael Hart's book, The 100 Most Influential People. And he's not Muslim at all, but he made Muhammad as one, which some people who are not Muslims don't like that he did that. But his reasons were, he is the person who has fulfilled more things for you to follow. You know, he married, he ran a government. They want to know why did he's a Christian? Why did he say, you know, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam?
Okay, brother Idris, hold your thought there. We've got another phone call from Egypt. We have Sama. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Walaikum salam, brothers. How are you?
I'm very well. Yourself? How are you today?
Ramadan Kareem to all of you. We are enjoying all your programs.
Ramadan Mubarak to you as well. Go ahead, sister, with your question or
all
comment.
your efforts for all the good you are doing for the Islamic community.
Ameen.
Ameen, Ya Rab. Brother, in regard to this, discussing about the goodness of Prophet and how humble he was and how simple he was, it is extremely difficult in this 21st century to be with people humble and simple. There have been many scenarios where it becomes very difficult to control your temper and swallow your pride and be literally ridiculed when you are humble and simple. So I find it difficult to balance between the Sunnah and the present trend of generation of people who think power and might and glory and pride is what makes a person. So can any of you just throw some light on as to how to practice this in the present world? Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much, sister, for that very important question. I'm sure there are hundreds of people watching and asking the same question. How do we balance between following the Sunnah and at the same time being in this life and trying to continue with our daily activities as well? But before we answer that question, we are going to move over to a report, and then when we come back, inshallah, we're going to take that question and discuss it in further details. Not just that, but we're going to look at ways in which we can actually truly love the process of not lip service, but with action as well. So let's watch this report, and we'll see you all in a few moments.
In His name we die, here and there.
So today we are at American University and we are having a community iftar held by the American University for the Muslim community and the Muslim students on campus. And we have our friend Henry. He is a student here at American and he's going to talk about his experience with the Muslim community.
Well, I wanted to come to Iftar because I was in DC and I wanted to have a night where I could have a good experience with the community. And I liked how we could talk about just general topics as well as even talk about faith. And the food was absolutely delicious, and it was very nice to share it with lots of great people. So I would definitely recommend everyone in the AU community, whenever they can, stop on by to an MSA event or another event being held here at the Case Spiritual Life Center. It's really nice to be a part of just a greater community.
So today we are at the American University in Washington, D.C., and they are holding an iftar for the Muslim community and Muslim students on campus and other interns here in Washington, D.C. And we have Mahdi with us today. He's from Pakistan and he's doing an internship here in D.C. He will tell us a little bit about his Ramadan experience in D.C.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Mahdi. It's been a little bit difficult being an intern here away from home. But I find some solace in the fact that there's Muslim students on campus who are holding iftari every single night or every Tuesday. In comparison to how it's usually done in Pakistan, you know, we stay out late, we have sehri, and then spend time with family, and then at night spend time with family again. So it's very family oriented. And then you have iftari, and knowing that there are other Muslims in DC that are having events kind of brings me happiness and gives me that Ramadan vibe that I usually feel, and the spirit of Ramadan that I usually feel every other year.
And in His name we die, here and there.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers, after a very short report there talking about Ramadan in a particular community there in the United States. Now, dear brothers and sisters, let's get back to our program. We're talking about the love of the Prophet ﷺ, and in this next part, we want to really look at practical ways in which we can prove our love for the Prophet ﷺ, not just lip service. But before we do that, let's take the sister's question, which was prior to the report, on how we can implement the Sunnah in the day and age that we live in today without being ridiculed. And not just that, but she also mentioned a very important quality of the Prophet ﷺ, and that was humbleness. So if we can open up the floor, who would like to go first?
If I can, sister, is it Sama?
Yeah.
Sama? First of all, let me qualify and say that I am not qualified to answer this question, but I can share my personal opinion about it as an amateur Muslim. The thing in your question that caught my attention was trying to live a simple life as a Muslim in the modern times. And there are many distractions that we have now that are surrounding us in terms of communications, even the satellite TV channel that you're watching right now, social media, internet, even the life that we live in crowded cities with the human population exploding every year. How to live a simple life as a Muslim. One thing I might suggest for myself and for others is to ask about all the technologies that we're using, the way that we're living life, what exactly is absolutely necessary. Tear down, strip down everything in our life and ask what is absolutely necessary for continuing my life, sustaining my life, and go from there as a foundation. And once we start adding, you know, that I need a car, that I need a telephone to communicate, that I need such and such, then it comes, the question becomes how to manage all that stuff, set limits on consumption of TV, set limits on the number of hours of TV viewing, of internet surfing, so on and so forth. Start with, you know, what Allah has given us, what is necessary to sustain our lives, what is absolutely necessary to function in the modern societies, having cars, so on and so forth. And then once we add these technologies, it's setting limits and monitoring ourselves, monitoring our time, how many hours per week, per day, and like that. That's just my humble suggestion.
Excellent. Very practical. Very practical. Excellent. Brother Idris, can I ask you to just touch on the second part of a question where she talked about humbleness?
Yeah.
How can we achieve humbleness in our lives?
I think it's sort of as a building process or something that you have to work on also, because as we said earlier, the nature of man, sometimes you kind of lose this. And as she said, in today's modern world where things, you know, being proud and all this is more, you know, produced and as being the way to be, but it really isn't. It's something you have to do and work on. For instance, like a lot of shayukh, sometimes they don't tell people, but they do things that they might find humiliating or beneath them, to humble themselves. Like there's one sheikh, I won't mention his name, but he goes to the masjid and cleans the toilets.
Okay.
Why? And people would see him and say, "What are you doing?" You know, and they would tell him, "Stop! No, let me do it. Let me do it." And he would say, "No." He would refuse and tell them to leave and get angry. And the reason why he did it was that he remembered that, you know, who he is, that he's still, you know, he's still, you know, a slave of Allah. to humble himself, to remind himself of death and who he really is. Everyone has that, try to find that thing that humbles you. And when you find that thing, make sure you frequent it to remind yourself who you really are.
Okay.
I know for me, there's some things I do. I'm only sharing it so that others benefit, not that I'm proud of anything. But,
sure.
But for instance, in my neighborhood, that some of the little kids, they call me by my first name. And some people would ask me, how do you let little kids call you by your first name? This is not right. And I would tell them, why not? What's the problem with it? I said, I don't care what they call me. I'm the same as them. I don't want to feel over them.
Yeah.
And I would tell them, I don't want them to feel like I have a right over them in the sense that, except that they respect me and I respect them. Other than that, I don't need them to call me, Ammu or any of these titles of respect. I said, because I'm just a slave of Allah.
Sure.
I'm nothing. I don't need anyone to praise me or be above or feel like I have a position over them.
SubhanAllah, Brother Idris, this is actually that was the trait of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, when he used to be sitting in the masjid or in the mosque. When people, they didn't know him, they enter the masjid and they don't know who is the Prophet. So he doesn't have like a place that is lifted up for him, or maybe a throne or something like this. No, they don't notice. Maybe they go to Abu Bakr, may Allah have pleasure on him, and they think that he is Prophet Muhammad. So this is just.
So you have to find things that you need to do to ground yourself and to remind yourself of death and where your ultimate outcome and your real position in the world and the reality of it. Because, like she said, in today's day and age, with all the technology and things going 100 miles an hour at you, you kind of forget your reality. So you need to be grounded at times. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So may I have like a fun question or something that to go around on the table? Let's imagine, what if the Prophet was living in this day and age?
Yeah.
What would be the saddest thing for him to see among the Muslim nation, and what would be the happiest thing for him to see? So maybe we can start by Brother Idris.
Wow. The saddest thing? Where do you begin? Wallahi, I mean, the Ummah is in a very, very, very sad state right now in so many different levels. I really wouldn't even know where to begin. I mean, whether it be people who are extremely just going on one stream, just, killing people for whatever reasons, silly reasons that they try to, justify, or on the opposite side where people are justifying doing anything and saying, it's okay. Relax, this is the deen. This is a deen of ease. They justify anything. Strange beliefs that thousands of years none of the ulama really have said. People seek out now. Okay, what's popular now? Okay, tattoos. Okay, I'm going to make it halal. I'm going to find out how. Who said it's halal? And they start propagating these views, as if that's a thing to do. I don't know why some people do this, but what's their agenda? But. So for me, I think that's probably some of the things I think that he would be angry or upset or sad about now. Happy about, I think that he'd be happy to see some of his brothers. This is what he said himself.
Yeah.
He'd be happy to see that people believe in him, who never met him, who see people who are way many years after him making sajda.
Wow.
I mean, how would you feel if somebody you had a message, and then you came back, over 1,000 years later, and you see someone who believed in your message?
Yeah.
You would feel, wow, this is amazing. Of course, he would give all praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you still would feel like this is amazing.
SubhanAllah. What about you, Brother Junaid?
Just answering the question very briefly, I would say definitely that the Prophet would be very upset with the amount of bloodshed and the lack of mercy.
It's really out of control.
Allah tells us, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, that Allah said He was sent only as a mercy to mankind. And the one thing that Muslims and non-Muslims are missing is the aspect of mercy. So I would definitely say that. And the one thing that the Prophet would be proud of, possibly, is that our numbers are increasing. We are in huge numbers, so maybe that's the thing that he'll be proud of.
MashaAllah.
Two words, sectarianism and hafezes. I think all the different sects that have come up, that he would be very angered. He would be enraged, perhaps.
Sure.
With all the different sects that have come up and the various divisions that keep us apart from being a completely united body. But I think he would be elated with the number of the hundreds of thousands of people every year who internalize the Holy Quran.
May you make it all of us from them, inshallah.
All right, you don't have too much time left. In the next 10 or 12 minutes that we do have, I really want to trying to set out some criteria in ways which we can monitor ourselves and see if we truly love the Prophet ﷺ. One of those things, if I could start off with them, we can go around the table, is the fact that if we truly love somebody, then we would emulate or copy them. So if we love a particular rap star, we're going to dress the way they are, behave the way. If there's a football player, we're going to have the same hairstyle and so on and so forth. So would you agree with me? The one way to show our love for the Prophet ﷺ is that we emulate him, not just in his outward, but also in his inward self.
Everything.
What do you think?
That's right. And if I can add to this, something came to my mind according to this question, also what Brother Idris was saying, like having the good behavior, that there's something missing. I think a lot of Muslims, they don't notice it, that the first 40 years of the Prophet's life, he wasn't a prophet, right? And at that time, he didn't even speak a word about God to his people, of course, like obviously, but his character spoke about him, the trustworthiness, the honest, and so everyone notices this from him. So when he speaks out and says something, there's no excuse for them to say that he's a liar. When they say this, well, of course, all the curses are going to be upon them because they don't have an excuse. The same goes to people like if I'm living in the West or living among non-Muslims, like people are concerned about like how can I invite people to Islam.
Okay.
The first thing is maybe I'm not going to talk to them about Islam at all, maybe for a lot of time. But they just see a difference, like I'm different from other people around me. When they see this, they're going to notice, like when I go and pray, when I go and do something like from the Islamic acts of worship and so on, they're going to be curious to know about this.
Okay.
So this is the best way of emulating the Prophet, because in the first 40 years of the life of the Prophet.
Just to add very quickly, just 1 second, what you're saying is 100% true. I've seen in America so many people take their shahada simply because they knew someone who was Muslim and they really, really loved their behavior. It led them to think, why is this person like this? Why is he honest? Why is he helping everyone? Why is he this and this and this? What's going on? So it led them to search and find out, and they ended up accepting Islam.
And you don't have to go through lectures and tell them, like, of course that's important, but this is what we are preoccupied with. Like, let's have lessons and lecture and so on. What about the practicality?
So to summarize, Omar, the first step is to have his character.
Yes, of course, definitely.
So that's one way of showing our love for the Prophet. Anyone got something else you could possibly say would reflect our love for the Prophet? Should I throw something
I would say loving what he loved and loving who he loved.
Very nice.
How can it be that you love someone and I hate who you love? That's just doesn't make much sense.
So who did he love?
His companions, his wives, most of all Allah.
Wow.
So I mean, you love and who he loves and what he loved. You know, things that he loved, you find and tend yourself liking, just because of your love for them. This happens even in a practical sense. When a husband and wife are together, they tend to, over the years, start liking the same things. The wife starts liking some of the things that her husband likes. The husband, if this is between husband and wife, what about the man who give you more than your husband and wife are giving each other? The more you know, you start liking what he likes just naturally.
Okay.
So it's important that you study him and let these things come to you.
Excellent. So number 2, loving who he loved. I like that. All right.
Very nice.
Did anyone say Quran and Salat?
No.
I want to put that on the table as well.
Yeah. So that's number 3.
You're asking for things that ways that we can demonstrate our love for the Prophet, peace be upon him. I would definitely say commitment to salats and memorizing Quran.
Excellent. Very nice.
Yeah.
And the Prophet did say himself, the best of people are those who learn the Quran and they teach it as well.
Yeah. One last thing before we want to get ready to close is that when you love someone, you talk about them. You tell others about them. You're overjoyed. How can you be head over heels for someone and then you never talk about it to anyone? You just keep it a secret. That doesn't show what's in your heart. That's contradictory to what's in your heart.
And it's related to another thing I'd like to say, that I mean, it's one thing to read Quran, to have it close, to even become a hafiz, and to fulfill the obligatory prayers and beyond, the optional prayers. But what if I'm cheating people, I'm lying, I'm filled with rage and anger and all this stuff, and my character is just, so bad. So yes, loving people, being fair with them, being just, so on and so forth, and starting with removing people, helping them to get out of a shirk,
You call them to what you love. When you love somebody and the way the Rasulullah loved us, he called us because he loved us.
Yes.
He wanted to save us. So if you love the Rasulullah, do what you love someone, you do what he did.
Okay.
As you said, imitate him. You call to people, try to save them.
Yes, and not for people to misunderstand that acts of worship are not important. Actually, one of the main reasons of acts of worship is to purify our hearts and to make us better people. One of the things about prayer is that it makes us actually literally from the Quran to get away from sin.
Okay.
And that how that would happen, as Brother Idris was saying, it comes from the heart. When you love Allah more and you remember His name and you prostrate to Him, of course it's gonna be outpouring from you after you get out of the salah. And if I'm not dealing with people with goodness, I have to review my salah. What about my prayer? Is there something wrong with it?
Yeah.
When I see it's not there's no manifestation.
No effect on you.
Yes, there's no effect.
You're doing something wrong.
All right, we have come to the end of the program, but before we conclude, I want one word answers if you can, or 10 seconds max, going from Omar and going around. One way in Ramadan that we could love the Prophet ﷺ more, very quickly.
Well, if we can link the interpretation of the Quran while we're reading the Quran to the Asbab al-Nuzul. Why were the verses revealed at that particular time and so on and so forth? Because they are always attached with the life of the Prophet.
Excellent. Okay. Ali?
Be more forgiving towards the people around us.
Nice. Okay. Excellent.
I would say in this Ramadan, find someone in need that you normally wouldn't do. Just a random person who's in real need and help them.
Okay.
And don't tell anyone. Do it for Allah's sake only. Help that person.
Okay, very nice. I appreciate everyone sticking to 10 seconds. All right, on that note, I'd like to conclude. Thank you all for coming to the studio. Thank you very much, all of you. And inshallah ta'ala, we'll see you on the next program. Dear viewers, we've come to the end of our program here on a very beautiful subject, and that is the love of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That is the completion of our faith, with our belief in Allah and our following of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It's easy to say we love him, but the actions are a lot difficult. We've got to fight our soul. We've got to fight our nafs in order to be like him. Just look at the life of the companions and what they sacrificed for the sake of the Prophet ﷺ. One of the most beautiful stories, and I'll keep it very short, is the story of Bilal. Bilal was a slave who, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, was freed. And he, not just that, but he became the mu'adhin. He became the caller to the prayer. And Bilal used to love making the adhan. And the Prophet ﷺ used to love asking Bilal to make the adhan. Matter of fact, the Prophet ﷺ used to say to him when he was tired or stressed, "Ya Bilal, make the adhan so I can rest." His voice was so beautiful. And the fact that when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, it was very difficult for Bilal to actually comprehend the fact that the Prophet ﷺ had left. He continued to make the adhan. But whenever he would reach the part of the adhan where he would say, "Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah," he used to cry. He used to break down. He had a very difficult time to continue making the prayer. So much so that he requested to leave Medina. It reminded him too much of the Prophet ﷺ, to leave Medina and to go into Sham. And he didn't make the adhan for a very long time. Then he was met by one of his companions after a long time. And they said, "Ya Bilal, make the adhan again so we can remember the Prophet ﷺ. We can remember those times when we used to be together." And Bilal refused. They persisted and they persisted until Bilal finally built up the courage to make the adhan. He got to the adhan, he got to the point where he said, "Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah," and Bilal, he broke down. He couldn't stop crying and he couldn't complete the adhan because it reminded him so much of the Prophet ﷺ, so much of the Prophet, so much so that when he was on his deathbed, his wife said to him, she could see the pain in his face. She said to him that you be patient with the pains of death. And he was smiling, and she said, "Why are you smiling?" He said, "These pains are very temporary, but soon I will be with my beloved. I will be with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam." Dear viewers, I'd like to conclude on that, and we will see you hopefully in the next program. So until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Name of Allah, we are born, in His name we live, and in His name we die. Here and there, our souls prostrate to their Creator with humbleness and piety. Creatures do dhikr all the time, here and there. Humans circumambulate the Kaaba while migrating birds stretch forth their wings, finding their way by Allah's mercy, here and there. Our Prophet advised us to travel, seeking knowledge, while exploring Allah's miraculous creations here